Happy Monday, loves. Today is the first Monday of October. Like, what the heck? Can we just also pause and be like, how are we already in October of 2022? This is insane. But what better way to start the month than talk about intentions briefly and more importantly, our values? Let's get intentional. Okay, I want you to take a moment right now and close your eyes and just if it's safe to do so. I always want to say that because I'm sure you're either driving or maybe taking care of little ones or things like that. So obviously tap into this when you can of bringing in some intentionality for your day, week, and month. So today it is October 3rd. What intention do you want to set for yourself today, right here, right now, as you listen to this? But also, how do you want to feel today? What values do you want to tap into? And also thinking about what values you want to tap into for this week and for this month. And if you're probably thinking like, okay, well, Sonia, I don't know my values, or what do you mean by tapping into my values? And hello, that is why I am here. We're going to break it down. I've got you covered, and let's get into good old values. Now, today I'm going to share a little story, then break down the definition of values, and I have a fun exercise at the end, and also tell you about the 6 components of values, which are derived from the world-renowned ACT trainer, Dr. Russ Harris. And side note, ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy slash training. It is under the umbrella of cognitive behavior therapy. It's like a newer wave of behavior therapy. And I will most likely speak of ACT a lot on this podcast. So let's get you familiar with hearing it. And also, second side note, Dr. Russ Harris is one of my favorite ACT trainers. I've taken multiple certifications from him. He is very fun and engaging when it comes to learning materials, very goofy, but oh so knowledgeable and creative. Anyway, he is also a psychotherapist, consultant to the World Health Organization, and medical doctor as well. He has some of the most powerful ACT books out there, 2 that are actually, I consider to be textbooks for ACT learning. He has ACT Made Simple and his new book, Trauma Focused ACT. All truly amazing and extremely valuable resources. I took his ACT for Trauma course years ago, and now he has a textbook for it. So if you're interested in any of this, go get it. He honestly has amazing freebies and wonderful resources that you can get on the website. And he is also a bestseller of the book called The Happiness Trap, which I highly recommend as a great intro self-help book. All right, enough about him. Let's get into values. Now, this word gets thrown around a lot these days. Like, what do you value in life? Or life's purpose is really tapping into your values. Like, I know I already said tap into your values earlier, right? Or what drives you? What are your values? Or, some people will just say, like, give me your top 10 values. It can feel very aimless and also such a big, broad thing to navigate. And honestly, when I was first asked, what are your values? I was in San Francisco for my friend's wedding. We were on a cruise around the harbor after the wedding, and he asked me this. I was 26 at the time, just started in my career, and I was just talking about feeling very blah about life and unsure of myself and where I was heading. And so when he asked me this, I almost scoffed at him, like, okay, well, like, why does that matter? Like, I'm living my life, like, and I was like, I guess I value friends, family, work, right? Like, it honestly didn't cross my mind to actually think about my life and like really that far ahead of the future or what I was striving for. I was just living my life, doing my thing, and just doing what everyone is supposed to do, aka work to pay the bills, rinse and repeat. So it didn't really hit me actually until like 2 years later when I was constantly self-sabotaging, not focusing on my own health and well-being, that I really started to look at my life at the whole I started to look at my life as like the whole picture and see that I really did want to make changes, but how? Like, I feel like that is literally where everyone gets stuck. Like, how do I do that? Like, where do I start? And I totally feel you. Like, I was there too. And so that's where values come in. Values essentially are how you want to behave or act on an ongoing basis, aka what types of qualities and person you want to be in this world. What does that look like? Who is she? How does she interact with others? How does she support herself? What grounds her? You know, like you know, like really looking at those factors. So values could be, kindness, courageous, loving, supportive, healthy, fit, confident, strong, powerful, accountable, reliable, connected, humorous, fun, adventurous, trusting, honest, sensual, intimate, responsible, leadership, understanding. Okay, you get the gist. There's lots and lots of values of like what types of feelings and qualities you want to embody. And you can honestly Google like values and you'll get a ton of different checklists. Or if you want my version, send me a DM and I can send you my resource. But anyway, so before I get any deeper on values, I want to share a common misconception. A lot of people get hung up on being respected or being loved or being trusted. And those essentially are not values. Being respected is different than being respectful. Being loved is different than being loving. Being trusted is different than being trusting. See that key difference there? Being respected is actually putting the power into the other person's hands. You are expecting to get something out of how you behave. So, this is actually a goal rather than a value. And it is something you can't control either. So, being respected is, let's say choosing to do certain behaviors like take on more tasks at work to appease your boss to try to finally get their respect, aka achieve something, when in reality we cannot control that outcome. And so if you're feeling stuck and frustrated and think like, oh, but I am respectful and I'm still not getting respect back, then you are missing the point. The point of being respectful is for your own well-being, not to get something in return. Because if that's the case, you're only going to feel disappointed every time you attempt to do the thing to get the thing. And then when you don't get it, boom, here comes frustration and resentment again. But if you live in your value of being respectful, you are tapping into multiple ways to be respectful with yourself and others and in different situations. And that is what matters. You do your part. You are respectful because it is important to you and therefore are living in that value, regardless of what the outcome of that is, regardless of how the other person responds, regardless of if that person is respectful back. That does not matter. What matters is how you respond and how you live in that. So be cautious of how you are viewing values and shift away from the perspective of giving to get or like give to receive, because values are meant to be a living and breathing component of how you operate in life, not seeking to get something from it, you know, and not trying to do it with the intention of getting some approval or love or acceptance from someone else. Because if you're constantly striving to do that in those moments, you're going to feel not good enough. And you're going to keep striving and striving for something that does not exist. And you can only lean into where you can have that power and you can have control over how you respond in those situations. And there's a whole other layer here of like, when it comes to communication with others and boundaries and all of that, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's really just your awareness of the language you're using when it comes to values and being able to shift into how can I live in this rather than looking at it from a lens of how can I be this way to get something. That's different. So just being very cautious of that. Okay, I went on a longer tangent. And this actually ties into some of the components of values. So let's keep going here. All right. Values work is one of the first things I always do with my coaching clients at the starting point because it helps establish where they desire to go. And ultimately, it is an anchoring point. It allows them to see where they currently are, where they strive to go, and establishing what potential obstacles or barriers are in their way to get there, and then how to navigate that. And it is such a beautiful place to see the whole big picture, right? So, no matter what behaviors, goals, habits you are engaging in, it always comes back to what values those habits are connected to, and if you are living in them. So, for instance, if you are sitting on the couch watching TV shows with your partner, that could be the value of quality time and connection. But on the opposite end of that, you could be binging TV shows by yourself to distract yourself and numb from dealing with issues in your life. And that actually might be not living in your value of quality time or connection. So, see that difference? Noticing when you are living in alignment or out of alignment with those values can be so helpful to redirect yourself in those moments. Okay, so that brings me into these 6 components of values that Dr. Russ Harris describes. So let's get into them. Number 1, values are in the here and now, in the present moment. So in any moment, you have a choice. You can act on your values or not. Goals by definition are in the future. You're moving toward them, aiming for them, striving for them. The moment you achieve that goal, they're not goals anymore. While values are right here, right now, in this moment, you are living and breathing that value as you engage in daily behaviors. And number 2 is values are freely chosen. You can literally choose whatever values you want to live by. You get to choose them, literally. If you decide on the value of kindness and you haven't been acting kindly, you can choose that value right now and start bringing it into your life instantly. And number 3 is values are never completed. Goals are completed provided you achieve them, but values are ongoing. Living in your values allows you to provide a solid foundation and home base for yourself whenever you get in a funk or off course. And number 4, this is a really powerful one. Values are intrinsically rewarding. There is something in living a value that gives you a sense of purpose or meaning. So just acting on it is rewarding in and of itself. Even if I don't achieve the goal, there is something rewarding in living the underlining value of that goal. For instance, there may be some days where my value of healthy looks different. Like I may not have worked out and necessarily reach my goal of 4 workouts that week, but I decided to eat a nutritious meal each day. That is still living in my value of being healthy. So just because you have one goal doesn't mean it has to equal a value. And then you aren't that type of person, right? Like that's not the case. Your values are like an overarching umbrella where you can have multiple goals within one value and you can bounce around of what types of behaviors encompass that value. You may not hit that specific habit one day, but you still lived in that value by showing up for yourself in different ways. That's the beauty of your values. And it also really helps to detach your identity from specific goals or attachments. When you are able to support your identity with the value rather than focusing on the achievement being who you are, that is where massive growth can happen. You can still see yourself as a beautiful human evolving rather than creating resentment or shame around if you did or didn't achieve that thing, then you are worthless, right? One, no, you are worthy regardless of that goal or achievement. And that is where you connect with your deeper why, your values. Okay, that was a little tangent. Okay, number 5, values are dynamic. They don't stack up neatly like books on a bookshelf. Think of a globe of the world. It doesn't matter how fast you spin the globe, you can never see all the continents of the world at the same time. There are always going to be some values at the forefront that you prioritize more and some on the back burner. And that's okay. That's life. We can't, it's all that talks all about balance, right? Like we can't do everything all at once. And values are like that. There's always some values that switch depending on the season of your life. And one might be a big priority for you months ago that you are now putting on the back burner. That's normal. Allow the dynamic flow. And last but not least, number 6 is values never need justifying. Ooh, this is a great one to finish with, actually. You might need to justify your actions and goals sometimes, but not your values. If my value is deep connection, I don't have to justify that to anyone. This one is huge for me because I feel like in society we are taught to have to explain ourselves, provide reasons why we are doing what we're doing. And honestly, a lot of the time we feel a need to justify and explain away things even without anyone asking. So when judgment comes from others, we tend to put up a front and feel the need to overly explain why we are doing something so that they can understand us better, to be approved of, to be accepted. And this can fall into people pleasing a lot, but that's a topic for another episode. So, really allow yourself to step into your values. Whatever you truly do value does not need to be explained away or justified to people. Okay. But now you're probably like, okay, but how do I establish my values? And how do you know it is actually your values? And how do you know it is actually your values you hold, or maybe someone else's values that you are carrying with you that you might want to release or no longer have? Here is one fun exercise I like to do with my coaching clients in our first session. Buckle up, get a pen and paper, because this is an extremely powerful way to assess where you are at and what you desire. And what's so fun about this is like, this is just like a nugget of where I start with my coaching clients. And from here, we break down the values into your habits and then into daily action steps. And we follow along with that. And anything that comes up along the way, we work through, and so much more. So, okay, I want you to take a moment, close your eyes. Once again, if it's safe to do so. And let's do a little visualization here. Take a deep breath in. Okay, let's travel in time ahead, way ahead. Let's go to when you are 80 years old. You are sitting in your favorite place. You are relaxing and reminiscing about the life you have lived so far. So many things you have done, explored, and embodied in this life. And take a minute to breathe in as your 80-year-old self in this moment. Now let's look back at your life. You are 80 years old, sitting here right now, looking back at your life. Answer these statements. The sort of person I was when faced with challenges. dot, dot, dot. Fill that in. And the next one, the three greatest strengths and qualities I embodied were. So remember, this is your 80-year-old self looking back and really tapping into these things. So the next one is the way I treated others was with dot, dot, dot. And take another deep breath here. Still 80 years old looking back on your life, and let's look at the flip side. I spent too much time worrying about dot, dot, dot. The next one, I did not spend enough time doing things like dot, dot, dot. And lastly, if I could go back in time, what I would do differently is dot, dot, dot. Let these sink in, pause, go back, listen to them, write those out in your journal and see what comes through. And as always, I would absolutely love to hear what came up for you. Send me a DM on Instagram. I hope this was helpful and that you also have an amazing rest of the first week of the month. Go tap into your values. And after this exercise, I'm so excited for you all and get intentional. All right. I will chat with you all next week. Love you so much. Bye, guys.